And good morning. Welcome, everybody. You're watching Starting Point. President Obama says, I deserve a second term. His argument is that the economy is improving, the jobs are increasing. Is he right? Also, Newt Gingrich is vowing to forge ahead. He calls Mitt Romney timid. The former speaker has a new strategy. But is it too late? And Madonna's Super Bowl halftime show steals the show from the champion Giants, but then she kind of has her spotlight stolen back. We'll tell you what happened last night. Starting Point begins right now. Well.
You got the hat trick this morning. This is the hat trick, baby.
Can we do a count?
You can hear that? That's
1, 2, 3.
Who at this table is a Texan?
Who's from Long Island?
Who's from God's country? We are. Yeah.
This morning you're listening. Oh, man, if I had realized that I have the three Texans. This is a song is from Texas Congressman Poe's playlist. Little Texas, God bless Texas. Nice to have you, sir.
Right, too.
Thank you. You know, oh, man. He joins our panel. Congressman Poe is a Republican from the great state of Texas. It's nice to have you, sir. Thank you very much. Our starting point this morning is what President Obama is saying. He says he deserves a second term because the economy is making progress. Here is what he told Matt Lauer in a sit-down right before the Super Bowl.
I deserve a second term, but we're not done. We created 3.7 million jobs over the last 23 months. We've created the most jobs since 2005, the most manufacturing jobs since 1990. But we're not finished. And the key right now is just make sure that we don't start turning in a new direction that could throw that progress off.
Republicans insist this is not President Obama's morning in America, even after Friday's better-than-expected job report. I spoke earlier this morning with Republican Congressman Bill Flores, and he had this to say about the president's policies.
His policies have failed. They have caused more unemployment than we had when he was elected. And we've also got a situation where he's retarding the level of growth that we could have.
God, it is Texas Congressman. Texas People Day. Let me get my producer on the line. We've got to fix this for tomorrow. So we have, however, a congresswoman from the state of California helped me out here. Karen Bass is with us.
Her dad is from Texas.
Is her daddy from Texas?
Yes, he is.
Oh, man. Nice to have you. Right. In spite of that, ma'am, it's nice to have you. You just heard what Congressman Flores had to say. He basically said, listen, this number is not President Obama's doing at all. What's your response to that?
Well, my response is that he knows very well when the president took over, we were losing hundreds of thousands of jobs a month. And what the president has done with his policies over the last couple of years is stop the free fall, and we gained over 200,000 jobs in the private sector last month. So I'm not really sure what my colleague is talking about.
One of the things that you have, and I think it might be on your website, it's quite remarkable. You visited a labor worker in your district. And I want to play everybody a little chunk of sort of what you've shot from there, and then we'll discuss it on the other side. Listen.
Sure.
I've been unemployed for a year and 2 months.
2.5 years.
I became unemployed because of budget cuts. I was downsized.
Even with a degree and experience as a veteran, I'm still struggling to find employment.
I have to say, you get up, you stay positive, look into my eyes, and see how much I want to work.
Wow, watching that, it was just so brutal. And to some degree, you have to think, isn't that exact thing going to be a problem for President Obama, which is how does it feel to people? Do they feel like they've recovered? Regardless of what the chart shows, and it definitely shows unemployment, is dropping slightly. Isn't that going to be a big problem in his re-election efforts?
Well, I don't think so, because I think of the candidates that are running, I have no doubt that President Obama has a deeper understanding of what unemployment is and what it feels like than, in particular, Mitt Romney, who has been responsible for tens of thousands of jobs lost and who characterized himself as being unemployed and having made a little bit of money, $375,000 from his speech. But let me just tell you that the purpose of those videos was because I'm very concerned that my Republican colleagues want to cut unemployment, cut the amount of time you can be on unemployment, and they want to add requirements to get unemployment that I think are completely unnecessary. Having people have drug tests, having people to see whether or not they've graduated from high school when 84% of the people who are on unemployment have a high school education or further. That was the purpose of that tape.
All right, well, one of your Republican colleagues is sitting right here with me. Congressman Poe, what do you think? I mean, her point about that message could really resonate with with voters, rather, when it comes to November.
Of course, the unemployment numbers are better. That's a good thing. However, there's still 14 million people that don't have jobs, and many of them have become discouraged. They're not even looking anymore, so they're not factored into that statistic. So it's very important that we really let help businesses create jobs in the private sector and move in that direction, then try to continue to pay people not to work. And that's part of the policy administration, is to pay people not to work rather than move toward helping people through the private sector get jobs.
Some people would argue it's not just paying people not to work, it's also giving them a lifeline until they're able to sort of make it to find a job. Is that going to be something that's going to be very hard to, if the Republican candidates are going across the country campaigning on that at a time when unemployment is still high, isn't that a losing argument?
Well, the argument is focus on creating jobs through the private sector as opposed to having more government intervention. Even the president has said the private sector is the area that creates jobs, such as the Keystone Pipeline, create at least 20,000 jobs, up to 100,000 jobs.
Some would argue with you on that figure.
Well, it'd come down to my district, and you can make statistics really...
creative math is creative
whatever,
math.
You add more numbers and it's then confusing. But the job numbers are down. That is a good thing.
Karen Bass, let's get back to you, Congresswoman.
Well, thank you very much. Let me just tell you, though, that is exactly the point. The view that people are paid not to work. Being on unemployment barely feeds people and keeps them in shelters. And frankly, an unemployment check is economic stimulus because that is money that goes directly into the community. But it's exactly that mindset that was the purpose of the tape. And we can get jobs. We can pass the American Jobs Act. There was the ability to have private sector jobs. So we need to move forward with the president's plan by putting the American Jobs Act on the floor in the House.
What happens if, as the CBO is predicting, which may not be true, I think we all agree it's a big if, but unemployment goes up to 8.8%. Congresswoman Bass, why don't you start and then we'll open it up to the panel? Because, right, that sort of kills the trend argument potentially.
Well, I think that's why we can't look at the job numbers and say the problem is solved. Just as my colleague said, there are still far too many people who are out of work. But that's why Congress has to get busy. We went through the entire year last year with the majority not putting forward any legislation to bring about jobs. And in fact, many of their policies was going to lead to additional job loss, such as how they were talking about resolving the budget. It was going to really cut into jobs. 700,000 jobs could have been lost by some of their proposals last year.
11% approval rate of Congress. That is not a number to be proud of.
I thought it was 9. It was only 9 because of our family. But the House has passed 27 jobs bills and sent those bills over to the Siesta Senate, where the graveyard of legislation goes. And the problem with the Senate is they don't vote that legislation down. They don't vote. And so that is part of the problem. The House has passed good legislation. It's just waiting on the Senate to make up its mind.
Congresswoman Bass, thank you for being with us. It's nice to have you. She was nice enough to panel with us when we were in D.C. the other day. So it's nice to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, we welcome any time. And Congressman Poe, thank you for joining our panel. I've got to go to look. Did you just whoop in the middle of it?
That's an Aggie thing.
Note to self: only 2 Texans at a time on the show. All right, we got to get to other headlines. Christine has those. Hey, Christine, you're not a Texan, are you?
I am not from Texas.
But you're gonna move as fast as you can.
All right, thanks, Soledad. 19 Americans could be going on trial in Egypt. They're accused of illegally accepting foreign financing for their nonprofit groups. The State Department says it's deeply concerned by the charges in the Egypt crackdown on non-governmental organizations. Authorities in Washington state say Josh Powell blew up his home and killed himself and his young sons yesterday. Happened just days after he was denied custody of his children. Powell was a person of interest in the disappearance of his wife, Susan, 2 years ago. Greece's coalition parties are supposed to let the European Union know today whether they accept the terms of a $170 billion bailout deal. The plan calls for massive wage and spending cuts. If they don't accept the deal, the Greeks face possible expulsion from the EU. And the longer Greece waits to agree to the bailout terms, the more jittery the markets get. U.S. stock futures for the Dow, the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, they're all a little bit lower right now ahead of the opening bell after a very good week last week. All right, it's SeaWorld versus PETA in a Southern California courtroom today. The animal rights group is suing SeaWorld, claiming